celebrating the 2-for-1 Drafts podcast. We have Chris Trapasso of CBS Sports, a draft analyst. We met at the Combine. Well, we met at the Senior Bowl, Chris, but I'd love to get started and ask, how you got into this business, how you got into being a draft analyst.
Yeah, I actually started at Bleacher Report, like when the site first started. So like a decade ago when I was in college, and then just worked for a bunch of different sites, always kind of like dove decently deep into the draft. And then a few years ago, just through like a freelance connection that I had with CBS Sports, they let me know that that contract that they had with NFL Draft Scout with Dane Brugler and Rob Rang, who did such a good job there for a long time, that contract was like expiring the next draft cycle. So to just keep doing what I was doing draft wise, and the next draft year, so the 2017 college football season, so the 2018 draft class, I was hired as their first draft analyst. Since then, Ryan Wilson does some stuff. Josh Edwards from 24/7 Sports has started to contribute for CBS Sports in terms of draft coverage, but that's kind of an abridged version of how I got to where I am today. I mean, we met at the Senior Bowl, but I've known Mike on Twitter like pre-Bachelorette, pre-long hair, so it's been kind of a long time knowing a lot of the a long time ago. It's been a long time following a lot of the guys at PFF, and just really a big fan of like everything that you guys have done over the last 6 or 7 years.
That's good to hear, man. And I'm happy to say that I knew Mike pre-Bachelor as well. He's a little bit of a different man. He's a changed man, but it is nice to know the man before pre-Bachelor. All right, well, let's get into the big board. You recently dropped a big board for CBS Sports. And I think the first question I have for you, your wide receiver one, Higgins at 5 overall on your board. Talk to me about what you see in T. Higgins.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have a tendency to kind of lean toward the bigger receivers. And I mean, I know that getting open is more important than making those contested catches in today's NFL. I mean, he didn't work out at the Combine, said he was going to rest, which I thought was maybe a little red flaggy. But I think he would have tested pretty close to like CeeDee Lamb, like high 4.4s, maybe 4.50. Vertical up there, in the mid 30s. I think he's a good athlete. I don't think he's this sluggish, kind of bigger wide receiver. And I think his ball skills and catch radius separate himself from Lamb and Jerry Jeudy, in my opinion. I just think on the vertical route tree, he can really be that guy that flips the field, certainly in the red zone too. I know we're not trying to throw wide receivers as many fades as we used to in the NFL. But I'm just a big fan of his ball skills. And again, I kind of lean in that direction. I think he's a good athlete too. I don't think he's going to really struggle to get open. I think he's good enough in that area. I love his releases off the line. Probably didn't face as good of competition in the ACC as Jerry Jeudy did in the SEC, but he saw press more often, and I thought he's pretty good with his hands and his wiggle at the line of scrimmage to beat press. So we kind of put that all together, plugged it into my grading system, and he came out like a 100th of a point ahead of CeeDee Lamb and a few tenths of a point ahead of Jerry Jeudy.
What were your thoughts on the Ohio State matchup? Because a lot of NFL evaluators, Daniel Jeremiah even said people are worried about the matchup he had with Jeffrey Okudah, and Okudah kind of getting the best of him in that matchup. Now, it's no shame in the number one cornerback in the draft class, this top 5 sort of pick getting the best of you, but what were your thoughts on that matchup in terms of how Higgins did? What did you see from him there that maybe gave you pause or maybe encouraged you projecting him to the next level?
Yeah, I mean, that probably wasn't a game that would be at the top of his resume in terms of film, because I think Okudah is a little bit more explosive than really a lot of the receivers in this class, and we saw that at the Combine. There was a few times down the field, and I think it is a tendency for Higgins that he kind of lets cornerbacks push him like toward the sideline or almost out of bounds at times. Arnett also was really grabby in that game. There was a pass breakup later in the game on a slant that Okudah probably should have been called for pass interference. Damon Arnett did get a pass interference on an in-breaking route in that game. He probably needed to be a little bit more physical at the line because, like I said, in the ACC, with his hand use and his I'm not going to say elusiveness, but his wiggle at the line of scrimmage, he was usually able to get a pretty clean release. Against those Ohio State cornerbacks, though, that are good in press man, I think that's a little bit of an area that he needs to improve. So that was kind of a red flag for me, but just what he has did over the past 2 years as a touchdown creator at Clemson in that vertical route tree, I thought that's really what was his ultimate trump card and why he's my wide receiver number 1.
Yeah, I mean, we like Higgins too, and one of the things you mentioned there is his ability to get off the line of scrimmage is different than a lot of other big wide receivers. But before we even had you on, we were going through your board, and I'm like, I think he has a type. Like, I think Chris has a type, and it's big wide receivers because you have 2 other guys here that you're a lot higher on than us at PFF. Isaiah Hodgins from Oregon State, Gabriel Davis from UCF. Both super productive guys, both bigger wide receivers, and the reason we're low on them is we just question their ability to get off the line of scrimmage. Both those, Isaiah Hodgins. I mean,
we question their ability to get off the line of scrimmage and also kind of separate.
Yeah.
I think the short area quickness does not show up for Isaiah Hodgins or Gabriel Davis. I would agree with you, though, that T. Higgins, and Mike, you said this before as well, is a better athlete than people give him credit for. Everyone wants to put him in this box as just a big-bodied receiver. But I think similar to Michael Pittman, who tested a lot better than what people said, I think T. Higgins could test above expectation. I think the best thing we took from this, really, is Chris Trapasso has a type, and it's big bodies. And I'm all for it, man. I can get on board with this. Moving forward, I know, Mike, you wanted to ask him a little bit about his cornerback takes.
Yeah. Yes. You have 12 cornerbacks in your top 50. You love this cornerback class. But I want to touch on 3 guys that probably are not in a lot of other top 50s. You have Michael Ojemudia, the Iowa cornerback, at number 37. You have Josiah Scott, the Michigan State cornerback, at 46, and you have Amik Robertson, the Louisiana Tech cornerback, at 47th. Break us down.
You want to talk about a tight, big-bodied receivers, small corners.
Yeah.
Josiah Scott and Amik Robinson, both small corners.
Yeah, I mean, starting with the Iowa corner, Ojemudia, he was kind of one of the guys at the combine. I didn't necessarily see the type of athleticism on film that he showed, but he ran in the low 4.4s. He had a 3-cone under 7 seconds. I just feel like these Iowa secondary members in Kirk Ferentz's system, they're just very well coached. They're good with their instincts. I think he's not going to be a man-to-man cornerback or a man specialist in the NFL, but I think with his length, he's over 6 foot. Has over 32-inch arms, and then you add in a little bit of what he showed at the combine, which, again, I don't think really matches the film. I think he's just going to be good in zone and make plays on the football. And I think whatever team picks him is not going to say, hey, you're on an island, you're in man most of the game. So I think he has the profile to get his hands on a lot of footballs in the NFL. In terms of Josiah Scott, I saw a lot of speed on film, and then he showed that at the combine too. Pretty sure he was a low 4.4 guy as well. And then Amik Robertson it might be a little high for a nickel corner, but you guys always talk about it. And we know that nickel corners are starters today. So he probably won't get picked this high. He'll probably go in the 4th or the 5th round. But his twitchiness, his instincts, his aggressiveness, ball skills, he kind of checks all the boxes for me. One last thing about Josiah Scott, I know it doesn't really move the needle a ton. I thought he was awesome in run support, getting off blocks on screen plays, which I think the latter is decently important in today's NFL with how often teams are throwing screens. I thought his click and close was good. And then a few times where he got stretched vertically, if he was even beaten at the line because he is a little smaller and doesn't have the length, I saw that recovery speed that matched with what he showed at the combine. So those are probably the 3 guys that I'm a lot higher on in this cornerback class. And I really like it, but I almost like it late 1st round into the 3rd round, more so than 4, 5, 6 guys going in round around, like the Jeff Gladneys, the AJ Terrells, the Jalen Johnsons, late 1st. Damon Arnett, a lot of those other guys, Bryce Hall, I think are solid 2nd-round options.
Yeah, I have 2 things there. I want to start. One, I think I do agree that especially with nickel cornerbacks, coming up and run support and playing the screens becomes more and more important as teams try and stretch outside the tackles. You saw that with the San Francisco 49ers attacking outside the tackles more often than not. And I think the other thing there, what you said about the Iowa cornerback, Michael Ojemudia, Mike and I have said multiple times that these Iowa defensive backs are so well coached, really do understand how to approach zone coverages. I'd love to hear your take on Geno Stone, someone Mike has called one of the more underrated players in this class. And I mean, very instinctual, very good in zone coverage, doesn't have the athleticism you necessarily crave at the safety position, but what he does bring to the table are those instincts, is that discipline in zone coverage.
Yeah, I mean, I think Geno Stone, maybe even more so than the cornerback, is kind of the embodiment of what a lot of these Iowa secondary members are. Like, just the type of player that they prove to be in college, and then it translates very quickly to the pros. He ran in the 4.6s, but I think he plays faster than that. And you just love his instincts. He played kind of this robber role in the middle of the field. I think that's where he's best. Get him a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage. Let him disrupt the intermediate portions of the field. And the instincts really are just off the charts. He reminds me a lot of Micah Hyde, who went to Iowa, that he's not going to wow you athletically, like you said. But I think in 2 or 3 years, we're going to say this is one of the more solid run support, not free safeties in the league, but run support, middle of the field safeties that has a fair amount of tackles, that gets his hands on the football, will tip passes, will have a few interceptions every season, and that coaches will probably value him more than his stats even show.
Let's stay on the
Iowa
safety
played
class.
34 snaps of man coverage last year.
Oh, man.
Only
34 snaps of man coverage last year for Iowa. That is kind of absurd.
Crazy.
You never
it is.
You don't see that level of zone heavy anywhere else, really.
Yeah, the NFL is like the most zone-heavy teams in the NFL still play man well over 100 snaps.
Yeah. Let's stay on the safety class since we did bring up Geno Stone. You do have 9 safeties in your top 60 on your latest board. Maybe you do like this safety class maybe more than others. I think some see this is a top-heavy safety class. I know Mike and I have said that before, but who are some of your guys in the safety class?
Well, we were kind of just talking about like slot cornerbacks and how like they're getting increasingly important. Mm-hmm. Kayvon Wallace and Terrell Burgess, to me, like they are what I think. I mean, they're not Kyle Duggar, they're not Jeremy Chin, but they're like kind of the future if you're not getting like an athletic freak that like you see them playing free safety, you see them dropping down into the slot. And I think they're both twitchy enough to play like a legitimate slot cornerback role. They play bigger than their size. They're very aggressive. They read their keys in the run game very well. So those are 2 guys that are probably not going to be picked as high as I have them. I have Kayvon Wallace at number 38 overall right now. I have Terrell Burgess at number 58. But I think they're going to be so valuable to their teams because we're, again, really focusing in on what Kyle Duggar can do, all the different things, Isaiah Simmons, Jeremy Chin, but I think you can get almost a discount version of those type of players that are much smaller, that are not as, imposing on the field, but do 3 or 4 different things really well. Play safety, play slot corner, are that extra defender in the box. Yeah, they're going to get overwhelmed by bigger blockers at times, but obviously the pass game is the most important, and I think they can carry out safety and cornerback roles very well.
I think they both had great combines. So like Kayvon Wallace, we already talked about on the pod earlier this week, but Terrell Burgess, we didn't touch on, but he came in 202, which like he was listed at like 190 something at Utah. So he gained weight, but then also ran a 4.46 and did 20 reps on the bench. Like I think he proved that.
4.46 is a great time.
Yeah, I think he proved that. Hey, I'm like a complete safety there. All right, one last question here. Let's get to one guy towards the top of this class. If you were to say, there's always a bust in every single class. There's always a guy drafted top 10 to 15 picks that just does not pan out. Which guy would you put a pin in this class and say, I don't want to be the team that drafts him?
Probably Derek Brown. And I've just seen it with so many of these type of interior linemen that like their highlight reels are crazy. They're super strong, but most of their highlights are them making like tackles for loss where they're just bull rushing like a really bad interior offensive lineman. I think Derek Brown is probably one of the strongest of that group, but he kind of reminds me of like Marcel Darius, that he's going to be a good player, but I don't think he's ever going to live up to like if he goes inside the top 10. And believe me, anytime I put him outside my top 10 in a mock draft, and maybe you guys the same, I get a ton of responses on Twitter like, you're crazy. There's no way. This guy's, future Hall of Famer. He's in Ndamukong Suh. His combine wasn't very good. I think he got better as a pass rusher using his hands, but I don't think he's ever going to be like an 8 to 12 sack interior defensive lineman. And in 3 or 4 years, the team that picks him is going to be like, all right, we have a solid guy that's going to be in the NFL for a long time, but we kind of regret picking Derek Brown when there was other players maybe at defensive tackle or just more valuable positions on the board when we picked him.
I think that's a good take, honestly. I mean, when you factor in positional value overall with interior defensive line, and then you factor in that Derek Brown didn't start to become a good pass rusher at Auburn until
old.
Yeah, until he was like an older prospect in college football. I think that is a good take. I know Dr. Eric Eager, a data scientist here at PFF, looked at Derek Brown and says, I don't even know if I draft this guy in the first round, knowing positional value, knowing how good this guy is as a pass rusher. I don't think that's a bad take at all. Well, Chris, we really appreciate you coming on 2-for-1 Drafts. We got to get you on before the draft, maybe after the draft again, but appreciate it again. Thank you.
Okay, guys. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
You want to get rid of me and get back to more great PFF YouTube content? All you have to do is push that button right there and subscribe. Thanks for watching.